Okay, we are live. Hello, hello, hello. I am Terry Ann Russell. Aloha and welcome to the show. I have Keegan with me today. It's our typical Thursday, although it's not our third Thursday. It's our typical Thursday today. If you're listening, Keegan and I was just in Hawaii and Keegan's finishing up her trip to Portugal. So while we were there, we had this sacred information that came through and we were very interested in connecting. And I am so happy to be joined by you today, Keegan, calling us in from Portugal. And I want to talk about some of these epiphanies and connections we have in the show titled today, Sea Codes and Soul Remembrance, a Lemurian Transmission. So welcome, Keegan, to the show.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me as always. It's always a pleasure and an honor to share this space with you.
Me too. I'm so excited. So Keegan and I connected and she sent me a message and she's like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this. And I'm like, I know, right? All of these epiphanies and things happened to both of us while we were both on opposite ends of the world. And so I want to share a little bit about that first because oceans apart, here we are, this soul connection and this Lemurian thread, right? It's invisible, but there's no coincidence that you happen to be on one end and I happen to be on another, and that we can connect through our energy. And I want you to share a little bit about what's going on for you in Portugal, and then I'll share a little bit about what happened with me in Hawaii, but then also our connection to Lemuria and all of these light codes that are coming in now.
Yes, the light codes have been insane. And if you have the opportunity and the pleasure to be around the water, I feel like Goddess is talking. I feel like the water's talking and really trying to connect. And I feel like the rocks are even remembering, and I feel like the sand is even remembering, and everything is trying to connect with us if you just listen. I can almost feel the pulse of the water connecting to my own, and it feels like it stretches, and it feels so healing and abundant, and it feels so cleansing in a way, where, you know, I know we use the water to cleanse, but the idea of cleansing the actual soul and connecting to things that are deeper. And a lot of them have been bringing to the surface and pulling out of me, literally with the tides, things that I've suppressed in my own bloodline and patterns that we have suppressed in our bloodline, and bringing them to the surface so that they can be dealt with without like immature emotion, but like realness, and connected on a real level to fix something, to heal something, versus to wash it away. And
Yeah.
it's been really incredible, especially for me. A big theme has been around like what we give and what we receive, and how that's like all connected to the tides, and how the ocean doesn't just give, it also takes, and how we're supposed to mirror that, and yeah, I don't want to go too far yet about like helping and the energy around that and everything, but it's just been done with such like a rebirth feeling. Water is home to us. We're born of the water and we return to the waters.
Yeah, and I feel like definitely the same way. It's almost as if a recalibration of
Yes.
everything that you thought was right is not right. And we're
Yes.
coming back into a sense of ourselves, right? What is this like for me? And when I did the show, it was probably a few months now, but what if doing the right thing is the wrong thing for you? And this show ties in directly with that, what you were talking about with the ocean giving and receiving, right? We just don't give. We need to learn to receive more. And if we're doing the right thing, or what we're told was the right thing, for the people that don't appreciate it, the people that could give a shit less, they're just out there taking, taking, taking. And they're willing to take all of our giving and not give anything in return. And we're coming into this new era where this recalibration is necessary for each and every one of us to start to understand what these codes are really talking about. So I want to begin with Lemurian light codes because these are really important, really crucial to what's going on. They're not coming from, when I talk about it, sometimes people get confused. They're not coming from outside of us, right? They're coming from within us. It's something that you feel within your bones, within your blood, within your cells, because you talked about the water and the womb space, and that's what we come from. And you were at the water and I was at the water. There was such a deep connection. And not only that I've known you in this like spiritual way, but I really know you. And when we were talking, it was funny because I did not realize at the time that Hawaii and Portugal had roots further back together that I wasn't aware of until I took a tour and I learned more about the history of Hawaii and how they did have Portuguese people come over and their communities joined together and they worked together. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to text her. Like these portals are tied together somewhere in this Lemurian migration that we're going through at this time.
And so, you know what's really interesting? We call the ships, like the spot where the ships park in the oceans or the bays or water, we call these ports, right? And so many people forget that the Portuguese, no, they didn't create ships, but they created navigation, and they used the stars and the moon and the tides, and they watched the oceans, and they were able to map out entire trade routes and open the world to each other. And so Portuguese influence is more worldly than I think people really know. And their roots go really deep. And it's because of the oceans. You know, if the oceans weren't mapped out and navigation wasn't created, you know, what would these portals or ports look like? You know, they're literally created for us to trade and travel. It's the mirror to the light codes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say, so we're at the opposite ends, right, of the world. And I felt like, and I saw like a bridge, right, this light bridge between us. And these memories as the ocean of a teacher, right? Because I've always been drawn to the ocean. I'm landlocked now where I am in Arizona, so no ocean. I haven't been there in a long time. And Hawaii holds this sacred message for me. It did years ago when we went to Maui, and it did this time again. But that water that you talked about, right? We are made of water. So much of us is made of water. We come from the water. How could there not be this strong connection to the ocean that we're not even really a percentage aware of?
No, there's, what is it, like 68% now of the ocean that's never even been explored or discovered. And I feel like that mirrors us as well. You know, our emotions are also controlled by the water's within us. And I feel like that's representation to so much depth within us that we're not even discovering as well. We only have a fraction of who we are and what we feel being expressed. And then there's this depth that is still a mystery. There's this depth that's so enticing, and it kind of calls you like a siren. The water does. It really does, and it calls deep into your soul. And how you said how these light codes come from within us. It is, you know, I used to think people were broken so the light could shine in, but I'm starting to believe that we're broken so the light can finally shine out.
Oh, I love that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, can you really think about it that there's so much of not only our connection, but everyone's connection. And we're so far apart, yet we're so close. You know, everything, we look at the depths within ourselves. And as you said, in the ocean, we haven't even discovered half of it. In ourselves, we haven't discovered nearly half of anything of who we are, who we really, really are on a soul level. And I think we're getting to that point, right? It's not just this karmic connection anymore. It's like, who am I really? Who am I deeply inside? Who am I afraid to be, right? Who am I told? It goes back to the am I too much again, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the ocean is too much for people, the vastness of it, the movement of it, you know. Some people are terrified to put their feet in the water, and then others will swim until they can't touch the bottom. And I think that's all a representation of us. And it is kind of terrifying. Even watching the water erode the earth, you know, it's representation of us and our perseverance.
And I equate it to the feminine side because it looks very serene, right? It looks very peaceful, very flowy, very given. But it could tear down houses. It can take down trees that have been rooted in the earth forever. I mean, it's not to be taken lightly. When I've seen some of those floods that are occurring now, there's none of this that is a coincidence.
No, that's another thing too that I wanted to like touch on, the fact that all these floods are happening and like so much of Pandora's box is being opened around people's emotions and people's emotions being triggered, and like the shift in consciousness happening and the shift in politics and the shift in wealth because our money and our finances and everything are contributed to waters. And nothing is by mistake. This is all divine. And if we, take a moment to pause and see what's happening, it's really creating a direction too, of things we have to pay attention to. How you said that feminine energy that's like, sweet, enticing, and amused that you want to dive into can also kill you. It can also be too much. I don't know, like I've never been to Hawaii, sadly, but it is on the bucket list. But walking the coast of many of the beaches here in my grandparents' town of Coastal Sound, they just watching the cliff sides and how the rocks have eroded and changed over time, and these are stones, these are rocks that at one time, and now we have pieces of stone because of the water just constantly beating away at the cliff sides. And then you go to other shores and it's just flat land, yes, meeting the oceans.
You think of a rock as something more solid, right? Whereas water you think of as more liquid, right? So you think a rock and this liquid coming in would not be able to dissipate it, but it does. I want to talk a little bit about, we touched into it, dissolving the matrix timeline, because honestly, that's what we are doing. We're talk about giving and receiving, dissolving the old timelines, right? This light, I don't feel is gentle. I feel that it'll pull you down into the deepest, darkest depths of yourself for a particular reason. For each one of us, it's very different. For me, it's about, again, releasing those people-pleasing tendencies, learning boundaries, learning how to use my voice, speak my truth, whether it, injures you or not. I'm no longer here to help you feel safe in my environment. You don't make me feel safe, I'm not going to make you feel safe. So this is something for me. That's exactly what this is. And it has not been easy. I have to share that. Sometimes people look at this and they say, oh, well, that must be really easy because you're immersed in that world of spirituality or healing, and I'm like, it's not actually easy. It's quite the opposite. It'll break you down.
Yeah. It will. And in spirituality, we have this facade that you have to be kind and gentle and you always have to help people and you always have to self-sacrifice. And it's actually the opposite, the water has a certain respect. If you go too deep in the water and you can't get to the surface, you can't breathe and you die. It has a respect. It has a level of fear, and it also has a level of understanding. And how you said with the people pleasing and stuff, being a spiritual person doesn't mean you're easy. It means that you're respected and boundaries are created. And we're taught that helping is spiritual, but helping is also hurting. It hurts a lot when you don't help to receive, because to give, the opposite energy is to receive. And the tides of the ocean teach you that. They are constant in motion. They're constant in balance. It gives for 12 hours and it takes for 12 hours. And for me, a big thing that came out is that talk is cheap and so is helping. Helping is saying, I'm just going to give to you. I'm just going to give and give and give without any expecting of or expectation of receiving. And that is not balanced. That's not correct. That's not the way of nature. When something gives, it also takes. And when things are given, you also receive. And I think it's a big switch in mind frame. If I'm giving to you, I intend to receive. Otherwise, resentment is built. Otherwise, anger happens, and it's one-sided, And it's been a big representation in my face just sitting and watching the beach, you know?
Yeah, you shared that with me from the beginning, how the oceans go in and it comes out, right? It reminds me of the tide doesn't ask permission, it flows. That lives in my bones today because it does not ask permission. It comes in, it takes, and it goes out. And it comes in and it gives.
Where?
But if you think about it, it's rhythmic. Like, we know that we are made of water. We know that the moon affects us. We know that the water affects us. We know that the water affects the moon. I mean, the moon affects the water. So why would we not think that that moon water connection to ourselves would not? I mean, I remember, so my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and years ago, she was in a memory care facility, and they would say around the full moon, there would be like this craziness going on. You know, there was no coincidence that it wasn't other times, but these full moons would sometimes cause this chaotic behavior. And that was years ago. I wasn't spiritual, but it made me pause and think, like, if that could do that to these people that are really technically like losing their memories, their mind, why couldn't that do that to regular people? And, you know, I know for me, I'm deeply affected by the full moon. My cycle
full moon right now.
Yes, right now, today, right? Was it yesterday?
No, today. Happy full moon in Capricorn.
And we know about Capricorn. Anyone with those horns, I'll tell you.
And I'm still in my mothering, so I still have a cycle, and I'm a full moon bleeder as soon as the spring hits. And so the full moon directly affects my body. It is a time of reflection, and it is a time to feel and reflect, like I said. And one thing I've noticed about the beach during a full moon is the times of the tide doesn't change, but how the tide acts changes. It's way stronger. It pulls from the bottom and pushes from the top, and seaweed comes up and a lot more sand. And we have on these beaches, they have flags, green, yellow, and red, to tell you like the dangers of the tide, basically. And people respect it. And at the full moon, they're changing the flags constantly. Like, I was at the beach for 7 hours yesterday, probably, and the flag changed 4 times in that 7 hours. And that wasn't just a tide change, that was a shift in the tides within the tide because of the moon.
Yeah.
You literally saw the waves get calm, and then you just saw them pick up in anger and then get calm again. And it had nothing to do with low tide or high tide. It was just the waters.
Right. And that sort of does reflect, right? Because so you still have your cycle. I don't, but I'm still deeply affected by when the full moon comes. Even with my cycle, I still have all of my parts. So, you know, why would you not think just because you don't have a cycle that it wouldn't be affected anymore? It's deeply affected, if not more so, because I'm more deeply connected in who I am and rooted in who I am now. But what I want to talk about a little bit about is this feminine flow, right? We talked about the tide doesn't ask permission. It just flows. It gives, it receives, right? It does in anger and it comes in peace. I mean, it has all the spokes of a wheel, right? So it's very well oiled as to how it works. But I want to talk a little bit about, for those who are listening and who get caught up in being the good one, because I want to go back to this. We talked a little bit about doing what's right and doing it for the wrong people. That the good one, how many of us have been told, well, you're not being very good, you're not being very nice. But, you know, they never told me the other aspect of that, which was, well, these people aren't being nice to you. It's that give and receive. Why should I numb myself down or dumb myself down because somebody else is afraid of who I am? I mean, why should I speak louder because you can't hear me?
Yes. Exactly. And it's this, it's okay. Like, you're never told it's okay. We have all of the times we're reprimanded for when we do stand up for ourselves, but we're never have these moments where when you do walk away because enough is enough, no one told you good job. you know? And sometimes I heard this really good saying today that said, you cannot possibly heal in the same environment that hurt you. And I think it's really important to see that as well, because the environment should always be changing if you're evolving and changing. So if you know the predictability of something and you know the understanding of something, then you are abandoning yourself every time to keep the peace for that. You're abandoning who you are and your emotions and your depth and your waves for the peace of what? To I don't know, collect shells on the beach? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
If it hurts you, it can't possibly heal you. Your understanding of it is what heals you, and the ability to walk away because you've given and you have not received.
Exactly. I love that. So I just want to pause again for a moment and really feel that the tide doesn't ask permission, right?
No.
It's feminine. It's not overgiving. It's not withholding. It's just this truth that flows from us. And I think when you're in that flowy space, and don't get me wrong, it's not always easy to do, especially when you have, immediate family involved, parents, children. It is not a husband. It's not always the easiest thing to do. And as we're learning, right, I want to stress that too, because we are all learning. I mean, how many of us have said, I should not have done that? That you go back and you replay this. I should have did this when I was there. I mean, I just say that about our trip recently where we were away and we had an issue. Like, I should have left. I should have just walked out that door, got an Uber, and took a flight home, and that would have been the end of it. You can say that, but I didn't do it. And so I'm still learning, right? Next time I'm prepared of what I will do and what I will say, but I can't get there if I'm not learning through that process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I want to hit on that too, because you said, it's not always the same, but I think that going back to the ocean and the codes that come from the waters in the ocean, the tide changes 4 times in a day. And I think that should be permission enough that you don't have to feel good all day. You don't have to feel good all week. You don't have to feel good all month. You can have anger. You can have sadness. You can have shifts. But what's important is the balance of that. If you are given that, you also have to receive it. And you have to understand it within yourself. You can't expect to give an attitude all day and then go out in the world and not receive that back. You can't go out into the world and give kindness and give grace and then be ashamed of your blessings. You have to understand that it changes, and it is part of the swing. You can be up at one moment and you can be down, but you better guarantee you're going to come back up. And that's the part that you can find grace in. And that's the part you can find understanding, that moment of rage. If you would have gotten on that plane and you would have gone home, you would have missed the receiving end later when those emotions calm down, or when that feeling went away.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think anger is one of the most underrated emotions. A lot of us, honestly, are very scared of what comes from anger sometimes, right? Either we've known our power in past lives. I know for me, that is a big one. I know my power. I know what it can do. And sometimes I'm afraid of what that means if that anger does come to the surface. But I think it's one of those most underrated emotions that people are really afraid of. And for different reasons, obviously, what we've been taught, what we've been told, whether you're a man or a woman. It's okay to throw a temper tantrum, right? I mean, I'm going to tell you that I've thrown several temper tantrums recently, being in the midst of this menopause phase. It's not pretty. But there's a lot that comes from it afterwards, as you said, in the reflection of that. What is this really about for me? And it was funny because my husband and I were just at the doctor the other day getting our checkups, and we were talking about menopause and the emotional waves and stuff, and how we often try to shut it all off. Like, well, honestly, doctor, what if I'm just tired of everybody's bullshit?
Yeah.
And he was like, that's quite possibly true. And I was like, yes, because it's true. What if I'm at the age now where, I've done this people pleasing, I've done this routine, I've not honored me. I'm trying to find out who I am and who I'm true to myself. And what if I'm just tired of your bullshit?
And
Plain
what
and
if
simple.
those, yeah, I'm not sick. What if I'm just tired? I'm tired of staying quiet. I'm tired of forgiving people that shouldn't be forgiven. Tired of, you know, trusting when I shouldn't trust. I'm tired of saying yes when I want to say no. My body is tired. My soul is tired. And why can't that be the truth, you know?
Yeah.
The rocks, my cousin showed me this really beautiful poem that was written about our uncle. For he has been passed away for almost 20 years, a Pisces, actually, a water sign. He and this poem was actually written about being pebbles and how we're all possibly from one giant stone, and over years of erosion and over years of being beat by the ocean, we become separate rocks, all forming from one stone. And eventually some of those stones start to break off because it can't take the erosion, it can't take the beating of the water. And I was like, this is so profound, because this is so applicable to like family, it's so applicable to the individual, and it's definitely the feminine nature. Like, we start as this whole stone and life beats at us and pulls at us, and eventually we're fragments of that, and you can see where the water has eroded us and beat us up. And what if we're feeling that breaking point and we're refusing to let go? And that is exactly what that is. It's knowing what the outcome is if I do not stop doing this. I know the outcome if I allow myself to be beaten and eroded. I'm ready for calm waters. I'm ready to, sit in that.
And it's really not about betraying others, it's about betraying yourself. So maybe if
Yes.
those broken off rocks are just finally a way to honor yourself, right? We're breaking
Yes.
away, we're honoring us finally. I want to talk a little bit about these Lemurian codes. I know this is really exciting for me. I've always felt a connection to Atlantis. We talked a little earlier about you and being in Portugal, and the aerial views you said can be seen look similar to Atlantis, and we're talking about Lemuria. So also, being in Hawaii and Portugal, I said we were like I felt, and when we connected that morning, I actually saw this light bridge between the two of us. Now we're across
I'm
the
like,
world. Hot. Lit us up. I'm in Hawaii, she's in Portugal, and here we are across this light bridge connecting and doing work. And not only when we're connecting with each other, right? Because there's a bigger process here than just Keegan and I. And when we look at that bigger process, that bigger picture, we're like ants on the log, right? We're just a tiny little piece, like you said, of those pebbles of that bigger stone. And we're connecting. We're not only giving to one another and we're receiving from one another, but we're giving to the water, we're giving to the earth, and we're getting back what we needed. I mean, I left Hawaii crying. I did not want to come back here to be landlocked again. And I know I belong here. So it's not something that I can just shift and change right now. But I want you to explain to me a little bit about your connection and how you were talking about Atlantis with Portugal.
So, southern Portugal, there's a place called Algarve. It's kind of famous. A lot of people know Algarve, Portugal. Some for bad reasons, some for good reasons. But the actual village or town, the aerial view of it is very much what is described by scholars and historians of what Atlantis looked like. The ridging around the landforms and, bridges that came out in this grid shape. And it also contains a cosmic egg, which is one of the oldest carbon dated artifacts that we have in the world. And it said that these cosmic eggs, that there was 4 sets maybe that came from the stars and landed in the 4 corners of the earth, and it is what created the separate the bloodlines basically of Mesopotamia and Sumeria and Lemuria and Atlantis and the water people and the people of fire and the people of the air and the people of the earth. And then they all believed in the ether, and they all had the spirit, the fifth. And the history here is so deep, and the roots here are so deep. It goes into the Moors, it goes into pagans, it goes into all of that. and the idea that, you know, some kind of shift happened or some kind of natural disaster happened that actually pulled the earths from each other and separated Atlantis and sunk Atlantis, and all of its teachings, which is connected to Lemuria.
That's crazy.
It is
It
crazy.
really is. I mean, when I was there and I had the visions of you and I together, and it was at the temple in Oahu, and there was such a connection between the two of us. And it was so much more than that. Yes, I've seen mermaids as myself. And so
I saw it's like crying over the sinking lands and trying to hold the lands up and prevent the children from drowning. Yes. It was really like heart-wrenching, but it was very forgiving in many ways.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about our daughters, because both of them, and so Sophia, when she was little, they're both very connected to the water, but for Sophia, she was deathly afraid of the water. And when I did a past life regression, she was drowned in another lifetime. I believe it to be one of those lifetimes. So she's much better now. She was out in the ocean, and I was so proud of her. But I want to talk a little bit about your daughter and how the power that we hold within our minds is able to come through ourselves and our body and our energy. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, Liv is definitely a water bug. You can't take her out of the water. I call her a little mermaid. And yesterday, because the full moon is here, the waters get really clear because it pulls all the dirt and everything out and all of the muck, and the waters just get so clear. And it was a low tide, and she came and got her goggles, and she could go way further out because she could reach the sandbars. And so I'm sitting on the edge of the water, and I'm just observing her and her cousins, and she is not afraid, and the other two are. They're terrified. And she just will go into the deepest depths. It's me that calls her back home because of my fear, you know. But she took her goggles and she was just diving in and out. And every time she dove, she came up with a new treasure. And she's like, Mommy, the waters are so clear. You have no idea what's out here. There's so much stuff out here. And she found I know a hermit crab is a land crab, but I don't know what the sea hermit crabs are called, but she found one. And then everybody was like amazed because they've never, in the 30 years of them coming to the beach, have ever seen a hermit crab on our beach, you know? And she was like, it's just because we can't reach it. We can't go out that far. We can't see them, you know? And it was just like, oh my God, this kid is so wise and gives so much lesson just being free. Yeah. And I saw her like as a little mermaid and just loving it and loving the exploration, and the whole world and life just melts away when she's in the water. And I was like, this is what I want. Like, this is what I want to feel. I want to feel that freedom too. I want to preserve that and give that because it's so important. Oh yeah. I went like, especially yesterday and the day before was so hot here that I just laugh like a little kid. I love that cold water that takes your breath away, and the waves, and how when you're in the water and you get out and you lay in the sand, you can literally feel the pulse of the earth. It's insane, because I think that combination of the waves and the sand and the sun and the wind, it's like all of the elements on you at once, and you can feel your rhythm, you can feel your pulse, and it's so rejuvenating, and it brings such a childlike nature out in you, and it just makes you want to create.
I get that with the trees here. So I have a lot of connection to the mountain and trees, and we back up to a huge Indian reservation with this beautiful mountain. And I feel like that with the mountains as well. And even in Sedona, which I believe, I don't know if there's any merit to it, but I believe that the mountains of Sedona were once submerged underwater.
I think so too. I think a lot of it got submerged underwater and broken apart. And I definitely think Olivia is rebirths from this Atlantean time where water wasn't feared. She's not afraid of emotion. She's not afraid to dig into someone else's emotion. She's not even afraid of other people's emotions. Like we've talked before about my husband being ex-military and having PTSD and stuff. And You know, she is so calming and she never judges, and she's so emotionally mature that I like just defend her like a lion whenever there is anyone that is not emotionally mature trying to crush that. But she just has this ability to move and flow like the water.
Yeah, I love that. And they seem to know what they want. I know for Sophia, that's one of the biggest things, because people always told me I needed to keep her contained.
Mm.
And she knows what she wants, and she knows that she has the ability to get it. And it was funny because when she was little, she would manifest against me. If I wanted to go on a hike or something and she didn't want to hike, she would actually manifest against me. We'd go to hike and the place would be closed. And so I had to find alternative ways to sort of work around her manifestation abilities.
It's true. It's true. Olivia is able to pull the emotion out, and I think it's her ability to work with the water. And then my moon sign and my rising sign are both water signs, and we both share an earth sign and water signs. She's a Virgo, I'm a Taurus, but we both share the same moon and the same rising sign. We're Pisces and Cancer. Wow. There. And her ability to change emotion rapidly in people is quite astonishing. And she's unaffected by it. And I tell her all the time, like, you don't understand, your ability to stay calm in any situation is a superpower, and your ability to stay level-headed and not absorb that is a superpower, and it is going to take you far in life, because so many people are unable to regulate, and she just can stand in it and not give a shit, like water beating on a rock.
Right. And call you on it, so you make sure you stand in it.
Absolutely. Or like she'll straight say, like, why are you letting that happen? You know, you don't feel that way. Or it's okay to cry. That sucked, you know, like cry. It's okay. No one's going to judge you. Or get angry. It's just temporary. It's just a temporary emotion.
Right. Well, they're going to judge you, but you don't care.
Yeah, you don't care.
You don't care right now, or anymore for that matter. I want to talk a little bit about this thing for me. So for me, light language has been huge. I've written it over the years. And those of you that don't know, it's a form of writing the language that I may hear in my head, but I've not been able to speak it. I've had this fear. Honestly, I could be in the car by myself. Like I can sing, I'm fine. I cannot speak light language even by myself. So this morning I was meditating before we met, and I want to do this light language blessing. So will you join me in that?
Yes.
Okay. So I invite you to place your hands over your heart and just close your eyes. And I want you to begin to feel the pulse of the ocean within you. Think about this. You're not here to perform. You're not here to prove. And you're definitely not here to please. You're actually here to remember. You are the tide. You are the stillness. You are the rising light of Lemuria in human form. And from that place we flow. And we flow easily. We give and we receive. We open and we close. We begin and we end. It's all a life cycle done over and over again. As you feel into your heart space, I'm going to channel a little light language blessing for you. Kanaman Anatama Kalea. Kanaman Anataman Kalea. Take a deep breath in and release it out. Pania Kanatama. Pania Kanatama. Pania Kanatama. Take a deep breath in and release it. When you're ready, open your eyes. And I could feel my throat tightening. I'm surprised that I was able to get it out, but I could definitely feel it like, what are you doing? So I still do have some of that fear. I'm definitely working on it. Being in Hawaii was such an immense blessing. We have such an amazing ability to be in a space together and share, you and I. And I want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed that light language
I did.
blessing.
That was very beautiful, and you should not be afraid. I feel like that's
Mhm.
just a past life thing where you had to not speak the language of light, not speak the language of code because the darkness had overtaken, you know?
Yes. And I'm finally getting through that. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody that listened to that today. It was really sacred for me to be able to do that. And when my guides ask me to do certain things, I'm always like, whoo, you're really pushing me out of my comfort zone. But I am so glad that I was able to be with you and have that support from you. So thank you to be here to share that with me.
It's my own throat. I love that.
I love that. It's been an amazing talk about Lemuria and the codes that are coming in. Is there anything else you want to add about these Lemurian codes?
Not to be afraid of the sun. There is a lot of danger
Mm,
right now around not being in the sun, and to beware of the waters and the sun in the waters. And I want to remind everyone to stay hydrated and get out in the sun because we need the cleansing of it all. We need the shadow to be busted through, and we need to remember. And the water and the sun have so much of that cleansing energy that we forget about. And it's really important to get that right now. There's a lot coming in from the stars, and there's a lot shifting in the planet. And you should definitely be taking advantage of it and not fearing it at all. It's in you. You are of the earth, you are of the stars, and it's all within you. So
yeah.
let it happen.
Let it flow, right?
Yeah, let it flow. And give yourself that grace. Like I said, the tides change 4 times in a day. So can you.
Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself grace. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've been learning. Give yourself grace, have patience. It's
Oh,
not a journey that is for the weak. It will challenge you and open you, but your soul is always there to support you. I think sometimes the soul is outside the body, right? When we're taught your soul is something outside of you, but I really feel that it sits within us, within that light that you were talking about that's there. And as we come back to this recalibration, this remembrance of who we are on a soul level, and that's what's going to change the world. That's what's going to change society and the collective. And knowing yourself will help you understand yourself, but also others that are around you. And not being able, don't fear other people. I think we have this thing and we fear that others can outshine us. I love your light. When the first time I met you, and it was funny because my mother's like, you don't even like people. How'd you meet this person? And I'm like, I
I
like
don't even try.
people.
Why do I want to just leave her everything?
But we met and there was this instantaneous connection. And I'm so grateful for you. And I'm so grateful for your guidance and coming on and joining me today.
I think, real quick before we leave too, I think that we shared space in Atlantis or Lemuria because I see a lot of how we were talking about water being connected to the emotion and stuff. If you take the story of Atlantis and it being like a bubble that sank under, and I think it's a representation of our emotions. And if you allow yourself to dive deep, then you don't have to be afraid. There's no judgment in those emotions. And I think that's where we were able to connect. We've already been beaten so much in life that it was like a fuck it moment. And it wasn't in a bad way, it was in a good way. It's like, who cares? She's just as weird as I am. Let's see how deep we can get with this weirdness and how much we can really unleash, because the more you do it without judgment, the more you remember. And I so appreciate for the safe space every time and the reflection that you give. It's necessary. It's necessary for growth, especially starting off so deep.
Yeah. Well, I love you, and I hope you join us next time. We'll be back in about 4 weeks and do our monthly adventure. Let's see what will come through for next time. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.